Hello and welcome to Talking TSM, the Game House's talk show about TSM's LCS team. I am Robert Haynes. I'll be your host, your guide into the world of, TSM. I was about to say Talking TSM, but yeah, no, that wouldn't make any sense. Couple quick things here. First off, a huge congrats to the Emperors. I know I haven't been doing the Draft Buff League updates. I ended up starting, I think, 2-0, then lost all 4 games and ended up bottom 2. Or maybe it's that I won 2. I forget which one it was, because I know one of my leagues I started 2-0. But either way, my team crapped the bed in a big way, and now the Emperors is the winner of the league for the first Talking TSM Championship. So congrats to you, my friend. I'm excited to see you back next split to hopefully defend your title. I will be giving an update about that. I am willing to start a second Talking TSM league, so if you are interested, please make sure to let me know. Otherwise, we'll see how the first league, see who comes back, who doesn't. I think we've already got, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've already got 5 of the 8 people coming back. So there may be some spots for those of you who were interested before. Please reach out and let me know. Another shout out to, I found out that some of the kids from my baseball team that I coach for Bishop Fenwick High School have been listening to the podcast. So shout out to you guys. I appreciate you guys doing it, even if you think it's, I don't know, even if it's for a joke. I don't really care. I'm just glad that you guys are listening. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're learning about TSM's LCS team because they're awesome. So yeah, shout out to the boys. Baseball season has begun. Very excited for that. But now we head into the first playoff edition of Talking TSM, which is crazy to think. I believe this is episode 25, quarter of a century mark. No, we haven't been doing it for 25 years, but, pretty excited to say the least that we've gotten this far. Thanks to those of you who are loyal listeners. I plan on continuing this show throughout playoffs. We'll see about the break. I probably will continue it during the break to a certain degree. I want to have some fans on. I know that Mellory wants to come back on. I'll probably try to get Matthew Highsmith on, talk a little TSM TL, depending on how this matchup and potentially their matchups in the future will go. I'll try to reach out to some TSM people, see if we can get some people on for that as well. So the goal is to still continue it. I don't know if I'll do 2 episodes a week. I'll probably cut it down to 1 during the break, but we'll see. Season's nowhere near over yet for our boys. So yeah, here we go. In case if you've been living under a rock or just haven't been paying attention, TSM will get Team Liquid at 4 o'clock on Saturday. And this will be after they have revealed the new set, which I guess, they've had all this time off, so the LCS is working on a new set. I don't know if they're going to cast the playoff games like the LEC has been doing from the stage. I would love that. I don't know if that's what they're going to do, though. We'll have to see. But we do know that the finals will be in Los Angeles with both teams on stage, which I would assume that also means the casters will be on stage. So very excited about that. That'll be fun. I am hopeful that we will be there. Anywho, Saturday, 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard, 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific, we will have TSM taking on Team Liquid in a... Wow, I can't believe I don't know this. I'm almost certain that it's a best of 3. Yeah, it's best of 3. I'm like 99% sure, but now I'm doubting myself. I didn't look it up because I was like, oh, I don't need to do that. I know. Come on. Where's it at? Why is it not showing me? Here we go. Mid-season showdown. I'm not seeing it, but I would assume that it's best of 3 because it pretty much always has been. It's not best of 5 until semifinals. So, we'll wait on that. But again, I'm anticipating a best of 3 here. Why can I not find this, guys? I apologize. I'm like so prepared for everything else, but for some reason, this one thing I'm not there for yet. So give me 2 seconds here. Let me find this. Dead air time. I'm not gonna cut this out because sometimes we gotta learn these things. So I just want to make sure I'm right. I prepped for best of 3. I'm assuming it's best of 3. Okay, confirmed. Best of 3. TSM, TL. We at it. So I've got a lot of talking points for today, and how I hope that TSM will take down Team Liquid. I want to start by looking back at the first 2 games of the year, where, as a reminder, the TSM boys beat TL twice. 2-0s, both times. Now, I'll be honest with you, I think it's going to be interesting to see, but I think that TSM have some very strange but good advantages going in. And I want to see if you guys pick up on them before I explain them to you. Let me know in the comments below if you do. So in game 1, TSM threw the whole thing off when they were like, we are picking Azir first pick. We're not going to give Jensen any chance of getting it, and we know that Power of Evil can play it well. At this point, TSM were 2-2. They had just come off of 2 really ugly wins after 2 really ugly losses. And this was the first game where it felt like they were starting to come together. TL through the whole draft, it was very, very strange. TSM picked the Azir. TL go Graves and Jhin. TSM do the Lilia and I think it's Kai'Sa next. Yeah, it was Lilia Kai'Sa. And TL just picked this random assortment of champions. They bring out the Kennen, I think, for the one and only time the entire split. No, one of 2 times. Both of them would be bad. And then TSM also pulled out the Pantheon. They were able to have global advantage. The Pantheon was just an absolute menace. He was all over the Rift, and Azir was also just making plays. It was the first game where we saw PoE be PoE. The power of evil that we have known for many, many years now, and he just showed up big time. TSM were able to take this game pretty handily. They did give over first Drake. They were able to get the second one. Drake just wasn't really much of a factor in this game. TSM kind of played their I don't know, their style of macro game. Huni ended up having Gnar. We were all really worried. He ended up actually playing really well. That was the first game we started to feel confidence in Huni's Gnar. We started seeing what Azir and Kai'Sa could do on our carries. The Lilia was really impactful too. And TSM just played, honestly, really well in game 1. And I don't know that there was anything that TL really could have done in that game. Just TSM dominated from start to finish. So then game 2 comes around, only 2 weeks later. And TL are like, yeah, okay, we remember game 1. We're going to ban the Gnar, the Azir, and the Lilia. All 3 of them were pretty impactful. But they forgot one champion because then they first picked the Seraphine, which is fine because Seraphine's very, very strong right now, by the way, guys, and has been. The fact that the LCS doesn't use her very much is pretty concerning. And, I guess that's a topic for a different day. Anyways, they forget the Kai'Sa. So after the Seraphine, TSM are just like, okay, we'll pick Kai'Sa. They also ended up getting the Shen in this game. And their last pick, which was a pick I had been calling for again and again and again and again, and I still will keep calling for it because I think that it fits TSM's style so well, was the Galio. Now, I want to remind you all very quickly that our boy Sword Art has played the Galio 3 times this year. And he is 3-0 on that pick. Well, TSM are 3-0, but, he is individually as well 3-0 on that pick. And before this season, he had been 1-4. That is how much this champion just fits with the team. Okay? So TSM, they let up some early kills. Luckily, they do have Drake control. They got first Drake. They I think ended up getting third Drake as well. They were able to keep Drake from being an option for for Team Liquid. And even though they were down, they kept fighting back. This was the game where they fought back, and PoE was able to take care of Tactical twice in the mid lane on the Syndra, where Tactical was just out of position, playing with his brain turned off, mashing his face on the keyboard, all that jazz. So, a lot of good. I don't know, a lot of good for TSM, Team Liquid through this game pretty hard. This is the game where TSM were, getting chased all around the map as well. The thing that TL just didn't do is they just let the lost Kai'Sa just get back in the game. He was able to go top lane. He got multiple towers, tons of CS, and TSM were able to pull this game out after a crazy Baron fight and win. And so you see in both of these games, TL threw at a different time. Either it was in the draft or in the mid to late game. And this is gonna be a pretty big talking point for us today, because truthfully, these teams are pretty even. Not just in the standings. Obviously, they finished second and third. And even though TSM got 2-0s over them, game 1 was really the only convincing win. I know it's only 2 games, but whatever. It was the convincing win of the 2. And so now they have a chance to go at each other. And I want everybody to remember this. Best of 3s are very different than best of 1s. You can get away with things like first picking the Azir. You could get away with pulling out the Galio last and having a major impact. You can get away with them giving you Kai'Sa twice. In a best of 3, that's not going to happen. And that's why it's been really important for TSM the last couple weeks to prove that they can play not only other styles, but other champions. Right? If Power of Evil draws an Azir ban, which I'm sure he will, we know that he can pull out the Syndrome. We know he can pull out the Victor. We know he can pull out the Seraphine. There's another champion that we haven't seen him play yet that we will talk about as well. We know with Huni, right, if the Shen's not working, right, or TSM really need to play a split push style game, They can bring out the Jace. They can bring out the Renekton. There's just a lot of things that TSM have shown. And I think another important one more recently is for Lost. 7-3 on the Kai'Sa. I believe he had the most games in the LCS on the Kai'Sa. 10 games. Teams just kept giving it to him. And he made him pay. He played really well. But we've also now seen his Tristana is very solid. He can pull out the Ezreal if he needs to. The Kalista didn't look great, but it's fine. We know he can pull out the Xayah too. So I'm sure Kai'Sa will probably draw a ban. Maybe the Tristana draws a ban as well. I wouldn't be upset if we saw him pull out an Ezreal or a Xayah. Even a Kalista's fine as long as they, pick a good team around him. So it's gonna be interesting to see how TSM especially handle these picks and bans themselves, right? Because you don't want to give tactical the Tristana if you don't have to. I know he's made some mistakes, but I would honestly personally rank Tristana over the Kai'Sa right now. I think Tristana is better than Kai'Sa. I've been playing a lot of AD carry over the last couple weeks, and I know that my silver, almost gold self is not seeing the best of play. But just from my personal experience right now, yes, the Kai'Sa single target damage is very, very strong, especially in the mid and late game. But Tristana just feels good pretty much after level 3 completely. She's able to take most fights. She, has plenty of damage. Her abilities jumping in and out are very important. She has her own disengage with her ultimate. And so she can just be left in a side lane. And more importantly, she can also take towers like it's her job. She could literally do absolutely nothing in team fights, but just take towers. I mean, literally, it takes one bad fight for Tristana to get 2 or 3 plates down. One bad fight in a decent minion wave. And that's it. She's very strong right now. I think that she's going to be a very interesting champion to see. And we know that both of them can play her. So, again, very important that TSM have shown these new champions. Now, there are a couple trends that were worth noting in games 1 and 2 for the TSM TL. For starters, it was getting PoE on a comfort pit. Now, he has a lot of comfort picks. Victor, Syndra, Azir, Orianna, Kog'Maw, if Kog'Maw was a thing right now. But I think it's important that they give him his comfort picks against Jensen, because Jensen right now is solid, but not doing much outside of that most of the time. He's not racking up these high kill games, and TSM need to take advantage of that. All they need to do is just be like, all right, PoE just needs to go even in the early game, and then we'll let him do his thing in the late game. Lost is, given one of his 2 champions. I think that's going to be he's given, in these games he was given Kai'Sa, which is smart for TSM. What I meant to put here was that Sword Art is given 2 champions with global ultimates. Galio and Pantheon. They were both able to get around the map. They both had a significant impact in lane, and when they were around the map, they were making plays. The shield of Duran from Galio is, I think, important. The Pantheon, while I know nerfed, is still strong enough. I think at times, if they really felt like playing him, they could. And then Huni is given playmaking tanks. The Gnar and the Shen. Both good champions, and the Shen specifically had a major impact in this game. I mean, he shut down Alphari. He was out CSing Alphari in game 2. And was really helping with that split push for TSM, which helped get them back in the game. So, these are things we got to keep in mind again, as we trudge forward, trying to figure out, all right, what does TSM need? What do they not need? All this stuff. Now, I want to look at the disadvantages and the advantages that TSM have, and I always like to start with the bad stuff first. So here are the disadvantages that TSM have. Outside of tactical right now, TL are playing an extremely smart League of Legends. They had the least amount of deaths and the best KD, kills and deaths, as a team in the LCS. They had 6 more kills, which is, negligible, than TSM. But they also had 30 less deaths, 33 exactly, and 25 less deaths than the next closest team, which was Immortals. They had 161 deaths across their 18 games played. So that's averaging about 9 deaths per game, 8.9 deaths per game. All right. TSM averaging just above 10. Kill-wise for them and TSM, it's about 13 kills. Okay. And we know that kills and deaths aren't everything, but that's an important stat to remember. They just don't make a lot of mistakes, and they just don't die very often. Okay, so we know right away that means that the macro is going to be important. Because if you're not getting a lot of kills, you got to be getting objectives. Macro and objective control, excuse me. All right. With that, the other disadvantages, early game. The early game rating for Team Liquid was first in the LCS. And it wasn't close. The next closest team was 100 Thieves at a 61.1. And we know that they have a very strong early game. Team Liquid's early game rating was a 78.1. Very strong. Now, TSM's got a lot better. It was terrible at the beginning. But it ended up being 5th at a 50.7. And I'd imagine they're probably closer to 100 Thieves range over the last couple weeks. They've been a much better early game team. You can tell they've been paying attention to it. But still, that is a difference of 27.4. So we will have to remember that as we go forward. But yeah, the early game rating, and this is all according to Oracle's Elixir, by the way. Their early game rating for TL was just really strong. I mean, they play clean League of Legends. They get ahead in Drakes. They get ahead in, well, just about every statistic you can think of. They're very, very, very strong when it comes to their control of the game. And this plays into what happens. I mean, Team Liquid have the best first tower rate in the game, 89% of their games. They had a first tower. Their first blood rate in 2/3 of their games. The only team that was better than them was obviously CLG. But 2/3 of their games, they were the first to 3 towers in 78% of their games. TSM at 61%. And TSM at 61% in first tower, by the way. Their Herald control, best in the league at 78%. And even though we talked a lot about TSM's Herald, issues and their love of it, they only had a 63%, which was 3rd. First Dragon rate, Team Liquid is 2nd at 67%. Their Dragon control at overall, 68%. Their first Baron rate, 2nd only behind TSM at 67%, which I know is not early game, but still, you get that advantage. And their lane control was 2nd only to Cloud9's, with their jungle control being 1st. So as you can see, their early game is so clean. I mean, so clean. They get first bloods pretty often. They get first towers pretty often. They are able to get the first heralds pretty often. They're able to get the first drakes fairly often. Their strong overall drake control would point to them having early drake control even at the 2nd drake and the 3rd drake. So overall, it's very clean for them in the early game. And TSM hasn't been as clean. They've been better, again, but not as clean. The Huni advantage also will not be there. And that's something we've seen a lot lately. TSM have just allowed Huni to carry them through games. It's not like Fudge, where Huni has clearly been better than Fudge this year. And I would argue he's been better than nearly every single person in the league, which reminds me, I do need to tell you guys my rankings for TSM. So yeah, I will do that too. I'll give you guys my voting and everything too. Again, this is my personal vote so if anybody from the LCS is listening, this is not the vote that we submitted for all pros and MVPs. Now there may be some crossover, but this is my personal rankings, not not what TSM ended up submitting, or not what TSM, not what the Game House ended up submitting. Anyways, so back to this. Huni's advantage, he's not going to be able to take that pressure away from TSM through the top lane, because it's going to be very hard for him to shut down Alphari. There are a lot of people who consider Alphari for MVP. And he's probably deserved it. He's played really well this season, but there's a couple not catalysts. There's a couple holes into the Alphari train currently that we'll take a look at too. So Huni's advantage won't be there. TSM can't just rely on him if their early game isn't there. He can probably still go even with Alphari, but we'll see what happens. And just the whole team in general for TL have more experience than TSM. They just do. They are, they've all played at Worlds. They have all played in playoffs. Even Tactical has about the same amount of experience as Spica. Lost just doesn't have that. Spica is still really young. Sword Art is brand new into the Western style, and players of the League of Legends, of the LCS, the LEC, all that stuff. And Huni has struggled in years past. He's not made playoffs very often. He, at least since he's been in the LCS, but now he's back and he's looking strong. But again, just the overall experience, and even just the players playing together. Jensen, Tactical, and Core JJ have been playing together for, now 2 full splits, and Core JJ and Jensen have been playing together, I think, for 5. So there's just more experience as a whole. Even last thing, just thinking of this one, like even Jat now has more experience than Bjergsen as a coach, right? So there's a lot of things that TL have that TSM just don't have right now. So those are the disadvantages for TSM. But here are the advantages for TSM. Warding. TSM are some of the best warders in the LCS, and Team Liquid aren't. TSM as a team have a 3.62 wards placed per minute, whereas Team Liquid have a 3.21. That 0.41 is important. Their control wards purchased, TSM have a 1.3, whereas Team Liquid have a 1.15. The only place that Team Liquid have an advantage over TSM is their clearing. And that's because late game they kind of have to clear, because their late game has been shaky, as we'll talk about. But then when you look at the main warders, Core JJ and Sword Art has an advantage over everybody. He's the best warder in the LCS. And he's placing 0.6 more wards per minute than Core JJ, which you may be like, oh, Rob, like that doesn't matter. Whatever. No, that matters. Vision is extremely important in professional and in regular League of Legends. Quick tip for your solo queue games: if you have better vision, you're going to win more games. Being able to see, and the difference between being able to see and not being able to see is very important. So for TSM, that's a big thing. They are very good at warding. They know where to place their wards. It's not like it used to be where TSM would have random warding. They'd have vision in bad spots where they shouldn't, where it just wasn't giving them any advantages. TSM has become a much better warding team as a whole, which kind of defeats the whole meme, for Bjergsen and 4 wards or Bjergsen and 5 wards. Actually, maybe it helps it. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the Bjergsen 5 wards. That's funny. Anyways, moving on. TSM also have an advantage in their macro game. Yes, I understand that TL have better first tower and better first to third 3 towers, but just there's something about the way the TSM have been moving around the map this season, whereas Team Liquid, even in their games that they played against TSM, they get their advantages and their tower advantages from their individual solo laning, which doesn't necessarily translate to macro. Again, I understand TL have jungle control. They've got better control over the Drakes. They got better control over the Rift Heralds. They early game, their macro is very strong. There's no doubt about it. But when it comes past 10, 15 minutes, TSM, that's where they are strongest. And that's where they can take over the game. So that's an important factor for TSM. Their macro game is strong. They move as a unit well. They understand how they want to take Drakes. They understand how they want to steal things, how they want to get back into games. They understand how to move as a unit. We saw this in Game 2 of Team Liquid, or against Team Liquid. TSM just frankly made better calls around the map, and Team Liquid didn't know what to do. I think the difference between TSM and TL, frankly, macro-wise, is that TL, as I said before, yes, they have their strong individual laners. But the reason why, we'll get to this in a second, their mid and late game is so bad for TL is because they don't fight well necessarily as a team at times. They just depend on their individual skills to be better than everybody else's, and that's been part of where they have struggled all season. Because when that hasn't been the case, or when they haven't played like that's the case, then they lose games. And so I believe that TSM's macro is strong enough to get through all the early game, everything else, because it's just, they're very good at it. They understand at what point in the game they need to make certain decisions and how they need to play. And I love that about this team. I love it. I put a question mark by this, but I do think that TSM have a drafting advantage, which sounds terrible considering the way that they played early on in the season. But once Bjergsen and the rest of the coaching staff and the team, obviously, because the players have a pretty major influence on the draft, but once, I guess, the whole of TSM got their drafting down, it was pretty good. Now, it's not the draft kingdom that Cloud9 has, where all their players have like a 60% counter pick rate, which is unbelievable, by the way. But TSM have made a lot better decisions in their drafts. They have shown the ability to adapt very well during the draft, and they learn from things pretty well. And we saw it last year. If Bjergsen truly was the one doing a lot of the picks and bans, as they say, like the coach of TSM, we saw last year in their losers bracket run that TSM just ended up out drafting people. They had better plans. And I think that, that's an advantage that TSM are going to have that Jat frankly won't. I know that he's very, very, very smart when it comes to drafting, and he has proven that time and time again. But I think that Bjergsen in a best of 3 is going to surprise us with how strong his drafting is going to be. So I give that as an advantage to TSM. The last advantage, and it's a pretty significant one, similar to the early game advantage for TL, the TSM mid lane or mid and late game rating is significantly better. It's second in the LCS, only behind Dignitas's. And Team Liquid have a minus 11.4, which is, I believe, third worst in the LCS, compared to TSM's 16. All right, so funny enough, that is a 27.4 split in their rating. That's crazy. I mean, think about that. They are exactly the same in their difference between their early games and their mid and late games. 27.4. For TSM, in my opinion, having a stronger mid and late game means that you're winning more often. Because, especially when it's that big of a disparity. Now, I know the disparity between TL and TSM's early games are very different, but you can survive your way through an early game. You can't survive your way through a bad late game. That's where you lose the game. And I think that this is truly TSM's biggest advantage. They are just a much better team when laning ends. And we've seen it. They know how to team fight. Their warding's better. They get really good control over towers specifically. And they have good skirmishing. Originally, this started out as 3 keys to the game for TSM, but you know, this is the longer portion. We are diving deeper into how TSM can beat TL, and I'm trying to show you guys all the different things that I have learned, not through only this split, but through my researching of Team Liquid and everything else. So I hope that this is fulfilling your expectation. I hope that you guys are learning a lot about what we can look for going into this matchup. So here are my 6 keys to victory for TSM. The first one is I want them to out-global them, which is not hard. Team Liquid don't really play with very much global pressure as a team. And I think that TSM can take advantage of that. I want to see picks like the Shen. I want to even see the Gangplanks. I know we haven't seen Hooney's Gangplank much, and I know when we have, it hasn't been great this season. But everybody knows that Hooney's Gangplank is one of the best all time in League of Legends. I want to see them pull that out at some point. Maybe not in this series, but definitely in the playoffs. Be nice to see it in this series, but they definitely could use it, right? I want to see the Shens. I want to see the Galios. I want to see the TFs, which we haven't seen much of from PoE. I'm okay if they don't use it. I would prefer that they think about it. But if TSM can out global Team Liquid, then I think they have a very good chance. We saw it in games 1 and 2. The Galio and the Pantheon played a major role. The Shen played a really big role for TSM because they could split push without having to worry too much. So I want to see those globals. That plays into I want to see them split pushing. That's like if Team Liquid want to go team fight heavy, so be it. Who cares? Play the Jace. Bring out the split pushing Renekton. Bring out the split pushing Tristana. I don't care. Even if they end up pulling out a mid lane Lucian, which we've only seen once, but it worked and it looked good. Bring out the split push. Make them meet you in the late game in the side lanes. We saw TSM take advantage of this in game 2, and I think that it's important for TSM to notice that, okay, Team Liquid are going team fight heavy. We don't have to match that. All we have to do is just keep the mid lane alive and split push. Even if it's a 1-4. instead of a 1-3-1. That's fine. But we've seen TSM pull out this split pushing type comp. They're very strong at it. And I think that it could be very, very important for them because TL love team fighting. After their early game, and even if they're not as great on the team fights sometimes, they do like to at least pick that style. You don't see them split pushing that often. And so I want to see TSM take advantage of this. And same thing with the opposite. You know, if they want to, you know, if TL wants to go split push with Alphari and they decide, hey, we want to play to the advantage that we have in our individual lanes, then TSM go team fight heavy, take every objective. Just make sure that the bot and top towers aren't lost for anything, you know, or for nothing, I should say. You know, make sure you have early Drake control, like all these kinds of things. Like there's the strategy ability is there for TSM to take advantage of it because they can successfully and have shown successfully to play both styles. Those are their two styles in their arsenal. I also want to look at them to punish Tactical. Just make his life miserable. Okay, he had 41 deaths this year, which is only a couple more than losts, but they were at bad times. And once he got outside of lane, he felt pretty irrelevant at times, honestly. And we see this. I mean, he finished with the fourth least amount of kills in the LCS with 66. That's 17 less than lost. He just wasn't as good. He just wasn't as relevant this year. He wasn't in a lot of fights. He had the worst kill participation amongst all LCS bot laners. He also had the second least amount of kill share for his team. And he had 25%, the highest death percentage of his entire team. So you're looking at, you're like, oh, 41 deaths. Like that's nothing. That's not that bad. But when you look at it in the context of 25% of his team's deaths, a full fourth on a team, you know, on teams that have, you know, 5 players, you do the math. You want them to be maybe around 20%, a little less. He had a bad split. He did. And TSM need to take advantage of this. Give Lost the keys. Unlock him. Unleash him. I also want to see Dragon control out of TSM. I think it's going to be really important. We have seen it time and time again. When TSM don't have Dragon control, they lose games. When TSM at least go even in Dragon control, they win games. If they have the advantage in Dragon control, they've won every single game. It's that important to this team because of the way they play their macro game. The fifth key is not to let the early game spiral. We know, we just talked about this, TL are a very strong early game team. If you can match them or even somehow beat them in the early game, you're going to win more games. They are a bad mid and late game team. They just are. So, take advantage of that. If TSM play like the super most late game scaling comp and they choose themselves at least one winning lane, so be it. That's fine. As long as they go even and they do their best to not give over, you know, too big of an advantage to TL, I think they're going to be in for a pretty solid weekend. And the last one is I want them to play a little rowdy. I want them to play a little loose. Not that I want them to make mistakes or take bad fights, but TL has always been this team that's like, you know, they're the buttoned up, you know, they make sure they put their tie up and they go into work and they're ready to go, right? They're very serious and we're going to play this sort of way. Tactical kind of broke that a little bit, but he's been playing a little bit more like that lately. And we've seen like they don't like to take risks. They don't like to be pushed out of their own positioning. And I think that TSM can kind of do that sometimes. Huni can play a little recklessly. Lost can. Spica can. I want to see that this TSM team really push Team Liquid to their limit. I want them to be like, whoa, what the heck? I didn't expect that. Whether it's in the draft or in the game, right? Weird dives. I don't know. Just throw them off their center. Because when TL plays the game, the type of game that they want to play, when they control the tempo, when they control the momentum, they win all those games. But if TSM can control it, and if TSM can be the one to throw them off their groove, I think we have a pretty good shot. I think we do. Here are my champions to watch for. Again, I normally do 3, but hey, it's special edition. We're technically covering 3 games this weekend, so thus you get more champions to watch for. First one, we talked about it already. I've screamed about it almost the entire split. I want to see Galio. TSM better play at least one game with Galio. Now, there are obviously going to be situations where maybe Galio doesn't work as well. But otherwise, they should be playing him. Especially if TL pull out something like a Lilia, right? If they pull out something like a Seraphine, if they pull out a Kennen again, right? Like I want to see, or if they go like double, like caster supports, pull out the Galio. He's just so good for so many reasons for this team. He can be extremely impactful for TSM. There's a reason why they are 3-0 on that champion. It's because it fits their playstyle perfectly, and it fits the way that they are depending on Sword Art to play the game. So I want to see this Galio. I also think that Tristana will end up being a pick or ban champion in probably all of playoffs. Like I said before, she is so strong right now. She is able to move around the map at will. She's able to take towers. She is able to take a lot of fights. She's just very strong right now. And she is also able to be a tank buster when needed. She fills almost every single thing that you could want in an AD carry and more. Self-disengage. Ability to dive in and out. I don't know. She's just great. All three items, core, AD carry items on her are very strong. She's just a good champion right now. And I want to see TSM either play her or ban her. If they are like, hey, we're not going to be able to play her, then ban her. I don't care. But just do not give her over for free if you can do anything about it if you're TSM. Renekton is also a really important champion. A really important one. Alphari is 5-0 on the Renekton this year. TSM are 2-0. Something's going to give. Either he's going to get banned or they're just going to have to play him. There are 3 champions that I think get banned almost every game. Tristana, Renekton, and we'll talk about it now, the Azir. I'll go back to Renekton here in a second too, but I want to make my point here. Renekton and Azir have perfect win rates on both teams. Now, TSM have obviously played Azir a little bit more. TL have obviously played Renekton a little bit more, but overall, these teams win on these picks. So I imagine they are going to be priority picks or bans basically every game. 100% rate throughout the entire 3 games. Hopefully, too, maybe TSM just pull out a 2-0. That'd be great. But I imagine it's going to be 3 games. Anyways, so, Renekton brings a lot to the table for both teams. It can split push. It can be strong in the team fight. The Prowler's Claw build has been really strong right now. You can still do Gore Drinker. It's not as strong as it was, but that devastating heal from the Q Gore Drinker on Renekton is very, very good. And so, I think that, Renekton's going to play big into the way that these teams play. So definitely be watching out for him. We'll go into Azir next. I was going to go something else, but yeah, we'll go Azir next. Both teams play it very well. I can't imagine that Azir gets played in this series. I have to think that he's perma-banned. I have to think that he is like the very first ban or the very last ban. Because either the teams are going to decide, hey, let's get rid of him, or they're going to say, hey, let's see if maybe we can get him through, and likely the other team will take that ban, right? So if Azir gets played at all, I will be shocked. If TSM are smart, they don't let Jensen play him. Because Jensen's looked good, especially that last game, that 8-0 game that he had to finish out the regular season. That was a dominating victory. I mean, that was a very strong Azir performance. So, no Azir. We're done with that. If we get to play him, great. If not, just ban him. There's a lot of priority picks, too, because, what if you leave up the Tristana, the Renekton, and the Azir? I doubt it's going to happen, but what if you do? Right? And you have first pick. What do you do at that point? I don't know. I mean, I would assume you pick Azir first, but out of those three, I don't know. But I assume there are 6 bans. I assume that at least 2 of these 3 get banned every single game, and the other one gets played. The next champion to watch for is Gnar. Gnar has been much stronger on Huni, and Alphari has a perfect record on Gnar currently. It took a little while for the LCS to kind of warm up to Gnar. He was really struggling. And then everybody's like, he's strong. I promise he's strong. And then they started getting the Stride Breaker build. He started just feeling a lot better in the meta. And the only thing you can't do with him is make him be your only form of frontline. Because we have seen how bad that can go. So, TSM should make sure, hey, not going to let that happen. Okay? Doesn't mean you have to pick or ban him necessarily, but if TSM are going to pick him, they need to make sure that either Spica or Sword Art are playing another form of frontline for this team. Another champion just to quickly mention here is Sion. I doubt we see him. Both Huni and Alphari are terrible on him. Alphari specifically is 0-7 all time on the Sion. At least I'm pretty sure Huni has a win on him, but neither of them play him very well or very often. If we do see him, I would be shocked. I know he's very potent in the meta currently, but excuse me, I had a weird yawn there. But I just don't think we see the Sion. He's strong, but no thanks. I want to save this one for last, actually. So I'm going to move on here to the Hecarim. Hecarim is very strong. Both Santorin and Spica play him very well. We saw Spica even start out 0-3, able to come back 3-13. Had a pretty strong game on him, even without CS. So, when he does have CS, he's normally pretty good on him. So I imagine that we will see a lot of Hecarim in these picks and bans. He is a champion I could see getting banned, but I more likely think we'll see him and Lilia played pretty regularly. I wouldn't even be surprised to see them just trade the Hecarim and the Lilia to start. I could definitely see it. Surprise pick. This is the one I did a little bit more research on, but a pick that's been popping up a lot more in leagues around the world has been Jinx. With the increase to range on her rockets, the base health increase again. I think her attack speed was also buffed. She's looking like a pretty strong champion, and if you can pair her with a team that can kind of just keep her alive, able to keep her from getting dove on, so she mixes well with Azir, Tom Kench, whatever else you can think of disengage-wise, then she's really strong. I mean, she can take over these games very quickly, and the LPL specifically has been enjoying her quite a bit. So, it would be it wouldn't surprise me to see her come out because, I think we get a Kai'Sa ban. I think we might even get a Tristana ban. And at that point, it's kind of open season. You'll see Kalista more likely out of Tactical than out of Lost, but Jinx is definitely a champion that could get pulled to kind of surprise everybody. And I think she'd be another champion that gives you not as much global control with her ult, but her ult is global. So that damage, maybe at a Baron or at a Dragon fight, or, just up the river if it's shot correctly. There's a lot of things that you can do with a Jinx. And if she has a chance to carry, if she's given like a kill or two early, maybe a kill and a couple plates, the other team is not going to like that. So let's watch out for her. And then my last one is going to be Orianna. My last one's Orianna. Power of Evil has played her a total of 2 times all year and 0 times since the regular split began. Jensen, on the other hand, has played her 3 times and is 3-0 on her. It has been very strong. It's both of them share a very similar champion pool. But the thing is TSM for some reason just haven't really played the Orianna. I don't really know why yet. I'm wondering if they've maybe just been kind of saving it because it is Power of Evil's all-time most played champion and his best champion overall. For Jensen, he is 7-0 on her, and it is also his most played and highest win rate champion of all time too. You don't see her getting banned necessarily super often. It's more to me that I think that, maybe she's just been something that, I don't know, she's been played a lot. And her pick and ban rate's 4th highest amongst mid lane, 2nd highest amongst mid lane. I guess TSM just really haven't used her much. I wonder if they pull it out. I wonder if they've just been doing everything else to kind of wait and bring out this Orianna. Because they got it at some point. They can't go this entire split without playing Power of Evil's best champion. I mean, it just makes no sense to me whatsoever. I can't imagine that they would do that. I just can't imagine it. I mean, he's so good on her. His KDA is like a full kill higher, a full point higher on her than nearly every other of his top 8 champions. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it happens. There is one other champion that I want to quickly mention too. We've been seeing Ahri come out with the new, mid lane item. I forget what it's called. It's what the old Super Soaker used to be, but a little bit better. It's got the set W, and it can freeze them if they're right in the middle. She's been coming out and she's pretty strong, and PoE has played her in the past. It wouldn't totally surprise me if we saw her at some point during this playoff push. I don't know if they'll see her in this game at all, but she can definitely be a lane bully and can be an interesting pick. So we'll have to see. I would love to see her. I'm actually kind of getting excited just thinking about the fact that PoE could just pull out an Ahri and just totally surprise TL. That would go with the play a little bit rowdy, mix things up a little bit. Maybe save a last pick Ahri for PoE. That'd be pretty cool. I don't know. There's just so many things that TSM can do still. We still haven't seen the Orianna. We haven't seen an Ahri. We haven't really seen the Jinx. The Tristana hasn't been used by TSM as much yet, but it's definitely a pick that they could use. They can pull out the Galio. There's a lot of ways that they can go and still win these drafts. So I really hope that they take advantage of all these different champions and everything else that they can do. All right, I'm going to quickly do my TSM rankings for All Pro. I'll do my personal All Pro rankings. Then we'll do an Academy update, one more update, and then we'll finish this up. So the TSM All Pro rankings, I believe that there was a case to be made. I said that Huni was probably TSM's MVP. I think that there was a case for him to be second pro, All Pro. I think only Alfari was better than him. And I think that, Huni deserves to be second, personally. So I'm hopeful that we will see Huni get the recognition that he deserves. He's played a really solid season of League of Legends, and people like, Impact and others, like, they fell off at the end of the year, and Huni only got stronger. So I think he deserves some consideration for at least second, if not second, then third All-Pro team. I think Spica will probably potentially win third All-Pro just by default. I think it'll probably be something like Blabber, Santorin, and then it's a fight for third after that. Probably Spica, Closer, and I don't know who else. Not Xerxes, maybe. I don't know. I think, truthfully, Broxa, if he had been here the whole split, might have been pushing for second. He played really well since he's come back, so I could totally see him having an effect on the summer. But for right now, even though Spica didn't play great, I think almost by default because the rest of the team struggled. I guess Dardoch. Dardoch's the only other one. I think a lot of people will probably put Dardoch too. I could see that. In terms of mid lane, it was total cluster. We were looking at the stats. We're like, what the hell? We were thinking about the games, talking about it, and we're like, Perk started off terrible, but, finished strong. Jensen was consistent. Power of Evil didn't honestly play super great, but if you take out his Corki games, he was pretty strong. Insanity was kind of under the radar, and pretty good. I don't know. I think DeMonte would have had a good chance, but they took him out. So I don't know. I think PoE could earn third team honors. I think it'll probably finish something like Perks and then Jensen. But, I think Saligo should also get some looks. Saligo had a pretty solid split. And Jizuke, a name I didn't mention as well. I think Jizuke had a pretty good split. I know he had like those moments where it was like, oh my god, how did you die to the tower while you were playing Lucian twice in a row? Well, that looked pretty bad. But he also, when doing my research, he was one of the highest kills. He had lane pressure consistently. He was, beating almost everybody in terms of gold difference and XP difference and all these different stats. I'm sitting there like, man, I forgot about how good he played most of the season. Sure, he was coin flip, but when his coin flipped heads, he pretty much solo carried, which is what we come to expect out of Jizuke now. So I personally think that he deserves more recognition. We'll find out where he ends up. I think PoE could potentially finish second. I think more likely he'll finish third all team, but I'll be honest, I don't know that he deserved it. I just don't know. I did a lot of research on it. Don't say that I feel comfortable putting him at third currently for this season. That doesn't mean I don't think that skill-wise he's top 3. I think that that's where he should be. And normally in the spring is where he is not his strongest. Summer PoE is terrifying and should be terrifying to everybody. So I'm excited for that. So, good split overall for him. Lost is definitely not in the top 3 discussion for me. He could maybe skirt by with a third team All-Pro, but I think FBI and Sven are going to get a lot more looks than everybody else. After that, it's a crapshoot. Neo definitely deserves some recognition, to be honest. Definitely actually had a pretty good split. I'm sure Tactical will get votes just because he's on Team Liquid. I don't personally think the Tactical deserves it, but Lost had a good split. I don't know that he deserves top 3, but he could skirt by at a third team, maybe. We'll see. There wasn't a vote for Rookie of the Split. I think they're just going to do Rookie of the Year again, kind of a thing. So we'll see what happens with that one. And then for support, this was by far and away the hardest one we had. I mean, it was really tough at support. There were a lot of options, and there were a lot of things that these 5 did. So for us, it was between Vulcan, Sword Art, Huhi, Core JJ, and Aframu. Those were our top 5. Trying to decide between them was really tough. I will straight up say this. I think Vulcan's going to get a lot of consideration, although I don't know that he should. And a lot of the major statistics, and especially with their fall off yet again this year, it was because of the bot lane. The bot lane stopped performing the way that they had at the beginning of the season. I think Huhi and FBI carried their teams very hard. I think Core JJ carried his lane extremely hard, and I think Afromood deserves recognition for the fact that he has now taken Johnson and Neo and made people like me consider them to be at least top 5 AD carries in the league. Maybe top 3. At least for a split. At least for a year, I should say. So Afro is clearly a strong support and deserves recognition there. When it comes to Sword Art, he also has done so much better later in the season. His first couple games in the lock-in tournament were really rough. After that, he really started picking it up. I can totally see Sword Art finishing somewhere between first and third. I could also see him not being on there at all. I think Core JJ and Vulcan carry a lot with their names, and I think a lot of people are going to look at Aframu. So Sword Art may not make it, but I personally think he is deserving. I think you could very easily slot him more likely towards the second and third spot, but there are some people who I've talked to who believe that he was the best support come the end of the year. Again, he had some of the best vision stats. He, really was the catalyst for TSM, and yeah, his laning stats weren't necessarily there, but that's because he was leaving lane a lot, and because at the beginning they were just getting smothered. So the fact that he and Lost were able to come back as well as they did in terms of in terms of their laning, I think was really important. So we'll see what happens with that. Again, I think Huni should be considered in the top 3. I think Spica will maybe get third. We'll see. I think PoE shouldn't personally be considered, but I think he could sneak in there at third. I think Lost could also sneak in there at third, but maybe shouldn't be considered. And then I think that Sword Art could be either off it completely or anywhere in the top 3. That's how close it was this year, honestly, guys. There were very few positions where I was really confident that somebody deserved a certain placing. Let me just put it that way. Maybe 2. I think there were maybe 2. I'm not going to reveal my personal MVP votes because I believe that that's how the MVP will shake out. I will say that my personal one does have a surprise on it, and I was able to convince the rest of the TGH staff that it was worth a certain placing. So I'm going to hold off on giving that one. In terms of coaching votes, I will just straight up say that I believe that TSM coaching staff really came together this season. I believe that they 100% deserve a top 3 spot. Considering they have 5 new players, there was all that pressure because it's Bjergsen and the coaching staff, a lot of pressure, right? The drafts were terrible. Everybody's like, what the hell, Bjergsen? What's going on? They have the $6 million man. They decide Huni over everybody else, and they pick Lost. They almost traded him, but kind of glad they kept him, obviously. there's a lot of things that could have and potentially should have gone wrong for TSM, and it didn't. And I think a lot of that has to do with the coaching staff. So personally, I believe that TSM's coaching staff deserves that recognition. I'm not saying they should be first. I think there's another team that could be first, and I think we did that on our ballot. But outside of that, I think that TSM deserve a top 3 spot for sure, without a doubt. All the things that could have and started off going wrong, and everything that they were able to fix. Again, Hooney played at a top 3 top laner level for the first time since he was on Immortals. There were times, on Echo Fox and stuff where he would have games that he'd play it, but not an entire split. I give that a lot of that credit to the TSM staff. So I think that they should be considered. I will say this too. I did not put any TSM members for MVP, and I don't think they should have been. So there you go. And that also kind of goes over my all-pro rankings to a certain degree. You guys can hear my thoughts on it, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what we put because honestly, I do think that it could be I could get in trouble. If I actually reveal exactly what we put, so I'm going to try to be smart and not say it. Last couple things here. Academy update. They still don't play for another 11 days. And poor CLG. They're the only team who their academy, even though their academy team finished, I think, 8th, theirs is the only team that did not make it, at least as far as I can tell, to the proving grounds. All other teams made it, and Evil Genius's 3rd team made it so far. So that'll be interesting to see. Also, shout out to the female Valorant TSM team. Love seeing that. I'm loving to see it. I think that all these female Valorant teams are really cool. I'm excited to see maybe there's going to be a male and female league, or maybe we'll really start to see some crossover, which I would personally love to see. Overall, just super shout out to them. Can't wait to watch them play. TSM already have one of the best Valorant programs in the world. Would love to see the female, people who identify as female team, do the same thing, and people who identify as female or male, just around the world, Valorant become a thing. I would love to see that kind of integration. I think that it could be a major step forward for esports as a whole. So big shout out to that. Oh, I realized I didn't give my prediction for TSMTL. Screw it. I think TSM are going to win 2-1. I just do. I know that a 2-0 when TL threw, and through both of those games in different ways. And I know that TL have been playing really, really well lately, but so have TSM. Those games that they lost they're very fixable mistakes. And I just think that TSM have a style difference. I just for some reason get this feeling every time I watch these games when they've played them, they play differently. And as long as TSM play their style, I think they come out and I think they win this. And I think they win one of the games in the draft, and it's similar to the beginning of the year. And I think that they win one of these games in the mid to late game. I think the game they lose is they just get behind in the early game and it's kind of over in the first 10 minutes. That's what I think. There's my prediction, fam. Hold me to it. We'll see what happens. If you like this show, please take a second to like, subscribe, and comment if you're watching on our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell icon so you don't miss another episode. I want to continue to make this the #1 TSM podcast on all podcasting platforms, so please leave a review, especially if you are listening on Apple. Wow, almost spoke tongues there. Share this with your friends, please. Join us in the TSM Discord, Talking TSM Discord. You can find me on Twitter at TGHRobertHaynes. You can also find the Gamehouse's Twitter at TGH Esports. Lastly, head to thegamehouse.com and check out the TSM content that I am putting out. I'll have a piece out either today or tomorrow. previewing everything that will hopefully happen in the TL game. And with that, before we head into what will be a very fun and interesting weekend, hopefully fun, I want the games to be good. As long as we don't get blown out 2-0, that's all I care about right now. Obviously, I want us to win, but I'm confident that we can make a lower bracket run if we need to. I just don't want us to get blown out. I don't want this to be like the Dignitas thing not Dignitas, the what was that last year? Who was it that we lost to? Golden Guardians. I don't want it to be the Golden Guardians thing last year where we just got blown out in the first, game, and then we had to like make this, terrifying run. Now, if we're gonna lose the TL, I want it to be good games. I want it to be close. Obviously, I prefer us to win. With that, thank you for tuning in. This show comes out every Monday and Thursday, and it is exclusively for your TSM ear holes. Let's go win, TSM. I'm Robert Haynes. This has been Talking TSM. See you next week.